lot more swing veterans. How many people swung today? And how many people did the Taekwondo self-defense class? So that's it. No more messing with anybody for the rest of You don't know who those were unless you looked really fast. So just benefit of the doubt, don't mess with them. Let's see. Zip line. Has everybody been on the zip line? Saw a lot of people zip lining. And we had a 15-foot deep recovery of a set of glasses from the lake. How cool is that? Woo! That was the most impressive thing I saw all day. Well, we've been talking a little bit about leadership teams. We want to start today talking about another leadership team. We mentioned the Student Leadership Initiative yesterday, and you got to sit in on what looked to me to be a very typical Google Hangout from my experience. But I thought I'd give you a little bit of background on the SLI. A couple years ago, as many of you know, we were building this brand new student life thing. And we were trying to figure out the best way to connect everybody. And there was one thing that I was positive of, and that was beyond the initial start, I shouldn't be in charge of figuring out the best way to connect students because I'm not one. And if you need any further example of that, when I first heard about the Empower calls, I thought that was the dumbest idea I'd ever heard of. So how many of you participated in a Power call? So aren't you glad that we didn't listen to my opinions, right? And so with that thought firmly in mind, I thought, you know what we need? We need a group of students who can sort of sort through the ideas coming out of the student body and make sure that we're working on the right ones, can help sort of shepherd those through the process and do that. And so the Student Leadership Initiative began with that in mind. And some of their projects are Unbound Legacy, which you heard Donnie talk about earlier today, the mission trip, thank you, I had too many E's in my mind, to Ecuador, which was the E I was getting to, the mission trip to Ecuador, and the study abroad program in Spain, all were born in the Student Leadership Initiative and then were carried out by some of the work they did and then handed off to other things. And as you heard from the little skit they did, they're getting ready to shift mission to become more of a group that helps you prepare for launch as you're starting to finish your degree and get ready for that next phase. So there's been a lot of people who have done some really hard work on that, and particularly this year the work has been difficult as they've been sort of changing mission. And I want to ask Hannah to come up here and recognize the people who put in some countless hours and blood, sweat, and tears and this really cool stuff that they've been doing. Hannah?
All right, so just like Jonathan said, I just want to take a minute to recognize some people who hardly ever get enough recognition because of all the brainstorming and the troubleshooting they do for the needs of the community. So, SLI, you know who you are. When you hear your names, please come up to the stage. So, first off, we have Joshua Shee. Joshua Shee is the president of the SLI, and he's been our fearless leader. On every meeting, he brings energy and enthusiasm to the team, and he endlessly thinks of potential ideas that would benefit the student body. And he's played a huge role in forming the vision and the goals of the SLI this year. And he has also been on the SLI before, and a previous team has never really done quite the gutting of figuring out the vision and goals, and Josh has just done a really awesome job with that. So, awesome, Josh. Our next student leader is Shulamis Klein. Shulamis is a fierce and logical thinker. She's a former member of the ECAT from last year, obviously an ongoing member of the Forums team. And each idea and project that's brought to her attention must stand the test of achievability. And she points out flaws very graciously, and it helps make the teams actually feasible and the projects actually doable. And she takes meeting notes like a boss. So, thanks, Shulamis. Our next person is Jared Wiggins. Jared is a creative and a marketer, and he joined the SLI this year, and he's brought passionate creativity with him, as well as a keen understanding of what students are looking for and what they're really craving His marketing skills, his technical skills, and his brainstorming helps keep him focused on what serves the students best. So thanks, Jared. And then we have Colin Laramie. Colin is an enthusiastic member of the SLI since it was founded a few years ago. And he has provided inspiration for several of the projects on the SLI, especially the study abroad, missions trips, and also the equip teams. And his passion for connecting students and believing in their ideas and their ability to do awesome things is really evident in everything that he brings up to the team. So thanks, Colin. So we do have a few other members of the SLI who didn't make it to Apex, so I'm going to go ahead and recognize them as well. Our first one is Noelle Miller. Yeah, let's clap for Noelle. She is the president of Unbound Legacy, like Donnie was talking about earlier. And she, back from when the idea of supporting alumni was even brought about, she has just taken it and she has worked tirelessly and effortlessly to turn it into what it is now. So Unbound Legacy wouldn't be the same without Noelle, and it just wouldn't exist without her. And she has been a most enthusiastic, dedicated worker to this vision of serving you guys as students. So yay for Noelle. Another member is Jordan McGuire. Many of you, she's the vice president for the SLI, and many of you would know her from being on the cabinet for last year's Apex. And she's dependable, she's detail-oriented, and she helps keeps us grounded when the team has so many idea generators. When Josh and Jared go to space. She helps taking over leading meetings sometimes when Josh is unavailable, and she has faithfully worked around her busy schedule to be a part of this team. So that's awesome. And then our final member is Alex Billups. He is a strategic thinker, and he leads the way in finding the new best thing. And he actively thinks about his own personal journey as a student and how he can help fill in the gaps that he felt like he had as a personal student on his journey so that you guys don't have to have those as well. And from big ideas to the smaller ideas, like the post-Apex chocolate that was on your bed, he cares and he seeks the best for the student community. So it's been a pleasure to work with you all this year, and you have taught me so much. I've really enjoyed it, and as you guys go on throughout the week, come and thank these guys for what they do, and feel free to give them any ideas that you have. Thanks, guys.
Hi, guys. Okay, so our next speaker is someone who some of you might already know because he's been hanging out with us this week, coming to sessions, meals, and hanging out during free time. Just a little bit of background. Previously, he worked for Chick-fil-A as a manager in Wheaton, Illinois, then in Atlanta, Georgia as an interim manager for Chick-fil-A Incorporated. He is now the franchise owner-operator of the Chick-fil-A restaurant in Oswego, Illinois, where he enjoys working with his team, developing leaders, and having a positive impact on his community. Now, just to give you an idea of what it takes to become a Chick-fil-A owner-operator, it is 5 times harder than getting accepted into Harvard. Everybody say, whoa. And on that note, please welcome Kevin Skarin.
Well, thank you, Ellie, and thank you guys so much for having me here this week. It's been awesome getting to hang out with you. I know I've talked with many of you already, and just such an encouragement seeing just such a sharp group of young people committed to developing themselves, and just the camaraderie that you all have with each other is clearly evident. So I guess before we get started, I just wanted to open up real quickly with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, just thank you for today, and thank you for the opportunity that you have blessed us with to be here this afternoon. Just thank you for Lou Merritt and Unbound and their focus on developing people and giving them opportunities and setting them off on a great career path to live lives to the honor and glory of you, Lord. I just pray for our time together, and I pray for these students and alumni, as many of them are going through difficult decisions that they have to make in the coming years, Lord. I just pray that you would give them wisdom and guidance and counsel as you guide and direct their lives each and every step of the way. I ask this in your name. Amen. So welcome. It wasn't too long ago that I was in a very similar place to where many of you are today. I came from a very similar background as many of you. I grew up in a homeschool family and attended Thomas Edison State College. And it was during my time at Thomas Edison where people started asking me questions. I'm sure many of you are facing today, such as like, what school are you going to go to, and what are you going to major in? What are you going to do after you graduate? Where are you going to live? What job are you going to get? Who are you going to marry? All those different things that I'm sure many of you guys are going through now as well. And many of those things I've discovered the answer to, and God's will behind them. So today I just want to tell you a little bit about my story and how I discovered some of those things, how I went about them. Because it can be a pretty daunting thing. Everyone's so worried about, like, oh, this pressure, like, you've got to be successful and get places, and I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what I want to do. But I'm going to share my story and how I got started, specifically with Chick-fil-A and trying to determine God's will for what I was going to do for my career path. And God's taught me many things, but I wanted to just share 4 of them with you specifically related to my story towards the goal of operating my own Chick-fil-A restaurant. And those 4 keys are, number 1, setting goals and taking action in the now. Just like Barb talked about last night, everyone can have hopes and dreams, but unless you do anything with those dreams, they're just dreams. You got to take the first step, branch out, and start going on that journey. The second one is being faithful in the mundane. Life is full of mundane moments that aren't exactly thrilling, like riding go-karts around the track or going on the giant zip line. But how can you be faithful in the day-to-day responsibilities that God has placed in front of you right here, right now, on that path towards being successful? The third one is closely related to that. It's the character trait of being diligent and the importance of that. And then the fourth one is one that I often see that people don't really think about as I work with a lot of young people. I've worked with, as Ellie said, I worked at the Chick-fil-A restaurant in Wheaton, and then went on to grand openings with Chick-fil-A, and as an interim manager worked in a bunch of different restaurants all throughout the country. And then my current restaurant now that I'm the owner of. In total, I think I've spent time in about 15 different Chick-fil-A restaurants. And so this fourth one is how to making your employer look great. And I see a lot of people kind of missing the mark with that because they're so focused on what can I get out of this? What can I get out of this opportunity? Instead of looking at ways that they can make an impact on other people. So, like I said earlier, I own the Chick-fil-A in Oswego, Illinois. It's a southwest suburb of Chicago. So I've been the owner there for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years coming up this November. And I know as I've talked with a lot of you already this week, some of you already work for Chick-fil-A or have worked at Chick-fil-A, and others mentioned like, oh, I know a lot of people there in the Unbound that work for Chick-fil-A. So if you worked for Chick-fil-A or have worked for Chick-fil-A, who out there works for Chick-fil-A or has worked for Chick-fil-A? So, oh my gosh, so quite a few of you already. The next question I had to ask is, what's wrong with the rest of you guys? So, no, just joking. So starting off on, so there I was in school, and I wanted to get the answer to that first question of, what is your degree going to be? So originally, when I started off going to Thomas Edison, my goal was I was going to get an accounting degree. And my goal was to get that, and then I was going to pursue a CPA, and I was going to go be an accountant. And ironically, part of the reason why I chose that degree was I really liked math and I liked numbers, and I was always good at them. Wasn't so good at like the writing or talking with big groups of people, like public speaking. So God has a funny sense of humor in that. But as I progressed towards my degree, I realized that while I was good at it, it wasn't necessarily something that I had a passion for, that I really loved. My older brother is a lawyer, and he has a job downtown Chicago, and every day he gets up early in the morning, takes the train to the city, works all day, and then late at night comes back, takes the train, and gets back to his family. And while I was more than willing to kind of head down that route with my CPA, going to Chicago, working in the city, I was like, I wonder if there's any other opportunities out there. So I started doing some research, which is the first suggestion that I have, is where we're at right now, is seek wise counsel, and pray and talk with other people. So I started meeting with other business leaders, people in the area, just to find out. I want to see, what did they do? What were their occupations? How did they provide for their families? I asked them questions about, like, what did they enjoy about their job? What was challenging in their job? What would they have done differently when they were a young person? And while I was doing this, I didn't know what it would be that God would have for me, but I knew He'd have something, and I was committed that I was going to find that. My dad operates a custom home building business in the Chicago area, and it was one day that he just happened to be in the building department applying for a building permit, and saw building plans for Chick-fil-A were sitting on the countertop. Now, I know that might not seem like a big deal to a lot of you. I've talked with I know you guys are all over the country. I've talked to people in Georgia and all over, and there's tons of Chick-fil-A's from Georgia, for instance. Well, up in Chicago, where I grew up, we didn't have any Chick-fil-A's. In fact, the closest Chick-fil-A restaurant would have been in another state. So yeah, I know. You can all feel sorry for me. Oh, yeah. So I grew up a Chick-fil-A deprived childhood, if you can imagine that. But when I found out that Chick-fil-A, I knew it was just really neat seeing the story of God's providence. I knew a little bit about Chick-fil-A. It was actually even before I was born. There was a gentleman that used to go to a church with our family. My parents knew. They were in the adult Bible class with him, and he left over 20 years prior to work for this company. At that time, nobody had ever heard of, called Chick-fil-A. Moved to Atlanta. And so that's how I'd kind of heard about it, was through my dad's connection with him. And he hadn't really even kept in touch with him or knew him at all. But I saw Chick-fil-A, knew it was a really popular company, coming to Chicago, millions of people, never having tasted a Chick-fil-A sandwich, and I saw an opportunity. So I started doing research, and the more research I did about Chick-fil-A, I read about the company and the Cathy family, Truett Cathy, who started Chick-fil-A. The more I was impressed with the values that they had, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Wouldn't it be neat to work with a company that so closely aligns with my personal beliefs? And and while I was doing that, I realized, uh, what's the next step towards finding out more about this Chick-fil-A? And I read online, and I saw that I was interested in the opportunity to own a Chick-fil-A franchise as I discovered more about that. And I'm like, well, what are the chances of me owning a Chick-fil-A someday, right? Here I am. I'm in college. It's my senior year of school. I'm about to graduate. That sounds like a way out dream. That's just way out there in the distance in the future. What's that have to do with where I'm at right now? And the first step was, well, right now, I hadn't even seen what a Chick-fil-A restaurant was like, so that would probably be a good place to start. And I had some friends from church that had moved to the Atlanta area, and they knew an owner that they had met down there, so I got in contact with them, and they gave me his phone number. And I still remember those 10 digits as I dialed them. No idea who this guy was, but didn't realize that those 10 digits that I dialed out my phone to talk to him could change my life. So I called him up on the phone and introduced myself. He had no idea who this guy was, and he was gracious enough to talk with me and offered to let me come down to the Atlanta area, where he actually had 2 Chick-fil-A restaurants, and to see what it was like to experience a Chick-fil-A and to talk to me and answer any questions that I had about pursuing opportunities with Chick-fil-A down the road in the future. So I packed my bags. I drove down to Atlanta. And I got there, stayed with my friends, and early the next morning went and met with him at 8 o'clock in his restaurant. And it just so happened that I was fortunate. They just hired a couple new team members, and I got to go through their orientation, saw what they did, and was really impressed. And he offered to let me work in the restaurant in the kitchen because I didn't have a uniform. And I think they assumed that I would work there for a little bit, and then after lunch I would go home. But I wanted to learn everything that I could about this, so I just stayed the entire day, and until after close that night. Did everything from learning how to make salads to making chicken sandwiches. Met with the team, and did that the entire day, and then did the next thing. Showed up at his other restaurant at 8 o'clock the morning of the next day, and worked in the kitchen. I think that night it was a little goofy. I wasn't exactly sure what was going on since I was so new, and I think the memo kind of gotten lost that I was going to be showing up to work with them that day between the different shifts as one of the managers came and the other one went. But I connected really quickly with the kitchen crew. Most of them were Hispanic, and it really helped that I could speak Spanish pretty well at that time. And so they showed me what to do, and I think I kind of overheard one of the guys that kind of didn't show up or something. So I think they really loved it because it was an opportunity for them to get some free labor. And I just feel really sorry for all the poor people that got all the food that I made that day, because they kind of just left me on my own to go ahead and make everything while they were, I don't know what they were doing, honestly, because I didn't know too much about it at that time. But I left there and thought about my experience, and at that time, after talking with Mike, the owner of those restaurants, he laid out for me what the path would look like to owning my own Chick-fil-A restaurant. He said, first thing you do is you would go and you would work in a restaurant, just do the day-to-day tasks, learn how to do things, show faithfulness in that. And then if you do well, as you work up into a leadership position in the restaurant, after a few years, you can apply. Chick-fil-A corporate has a development program for young people such as yourself that want to own their own franchise someday. And then as you go through that, if you do well again, then you have the opportunity to apply to become a Chick-fil-A operator. And as I was thinking about this, I decided that this is what I want to do. I see an opportunity here, and I feel like God is leading me in this direction. And so I came back to Chicago, and I kept calling Chick-fil-A, the corporate office, to see if they'd selected the owner-operators for the stores that were going to be opening up that year. There were 3 of them. And I kept getting the phone answer, no, I haven't selected any yet. So every Monday I would call. Finally, they had selected the owner operators, and I was able to get hired on at one of those first Chick-fil-A's that were going to be opening up in the Chicago area. And the point and the reason behind this story is the importance of setting goals and pursuing them. It's great to have a dream, but you've got to take that first step of action. Like, how can you be a success here and in the now? And it's behind setting those goals and stepping out and doing something. It doesn't matter as much what you're doing, but that you are moving forward. You know, if you get a job, maybe it's not in the career that you want to do long term. Maybe it's your first job, but what can you learn from that experience? The character traits and the people that you meet, and that you can then take forth to the next thing. And if it is maybe you work then you decide that this is what you want to do for the rest of your career. So start where you are and do it with excellence. Don't underestimate what you can learn doing things that aren't glamorous or necessarily exciting. I'll talk about this later on. So, as I mentioned earlier, the character and that discipline that you learn from that job oftentimes is much, much more beneficial than the actual paycheck that you receive as you start off. So have a goal and go for it wholeheartedly. Don't go halfway. Just as I had that goal that I was going to get that accounting degree and get that CPA and pursue accounting, I set off to do that, and God led me in a different direction, and that's okay. If I had not started off doing that, I wouldn't have been prepared for the next door that God would open for me later on in my life, because part of the work for Chick-fil-A was a requirement. You had to have a college degree. So in the now, set goals, take action, and pursue them. Don't wait for something to come along. Step out and move forward. Secondly, the next point I would like to talk about is being faithful in the mundane. I see a lot of people coming in through Chick-fil-A, either team members or guests walking in the restaurant, that they see it and they're like, wow, this place is so busy. I want to own one of these. And they're so excited about that. And they see the success, they see the opportunity, and they want it all, and they want it right now. But they're not willing to go and follow through with that dream that they have, or something that piqued their interest, without the grueling work of, climbing the mountain one step at a time, moving up and going for that. I've got kind of a nickname I call these people. I call them mountain jumpers. They want to just sit there and jump to the top of the peak instead of going one step, setting those goals, and then coming with an action plan to move forward with it. So do you guys remember my goal? It was to be a Chick-fil-A owner-operator, and that's what I was pursuing. And this is a lesson in being faithful mundane. So I came in, there were brand new stores that were going to open up in the Chicago area, and I went to, the first store I was going to open was just a little bit before the one that I was going to be working at full-time, and I got to work, and shortly after starting to work, I overheard some of the other Chick-fil-A trainers talking about how they didn't have someone to be the Chick-fil-A cow, and this was a dilemma, because if you guys have ever seen the Chick-fil-A cow, the kids love the Chick-fil-A cow, and we were there. We were setting a goal. We were going to have the busiest grand opening in Chick-fil-A history. In order to get that, we needed the Chick-fil-A cow. So I volunteered. I can be the Chick-fil-A cow. And little did I know what I was getting into. I put that suit on, suited up, and I got to it. And it was my goal that I wanted to be the very best Chick-fil-A cow that there had ever been in Chick-fil-A. And I think my reward at the end of the day was people talking. Someone had done over 30 grand openings. That was the best Chick-fil-A guy. Who's that guy in that cow suit over there? He's incredible. Look at those moves that he's got. And so do you guys want to see one of those moves? Okay. All right. Okay. So this is my move for when you're out on the street. So we were trying to set the record for the busiest Chick-fil-A grand opening. So in order to do that, we needed to get some cars in there. So here I am, side of the street, dressed up in my cow suit, sweating profusely. We got the street here, traffic whizzing along, and there's the traffic light. So I would stand out there by the road, and the light's red. I'd kind of point to them and kind of like wave them on, like, come on, guys, come on. Yeah, you know you want that hot chicken sandwich and those waffle fries. Wave them on. And as they started, the light would turn green. I would stand there, and I would hop, and I'd wave that arm. I'd wave faster, and I'd jump higher and higher. And then we'd go down, and we'd reel them in. And then as they turned, we'd point them in, just like an air traffic control, and they would turn. We'd jump, and then we'd do the wave. And they would honk. And yes, thank you. And I would do that all day long. And man, that's pretty tiring. And I'm not even in the cow suit. I'm out of shape. And but you can imagine, after doing that for about 5 minutes, it's pretty tiring. But I didn't do it for 5 minutes. I did that for 13 hours in the Chick-fil-A cow suit out there by the road, people in line, and it was a lot of fun, but let's just say I slept very well that night. And kind of the lesson through that is, on your way, as you pursue your path, success isn't all about the fame and the glory. Just like Josh talked about this morning, you see professional athletes or musicians, they've got all the money and the power. Everyone looks up to them. But are they truly successful? And is that what it's really about? What is success? And being faithful at just the mundane things that God places right in front of you. It's not about being a mountain jumper and jumping to the top of the mountain all in one step. That getting to that top of the mountain is taking action right now, being successful in the day-to-day things that God places in front of you right now in your life. Another example of being faithful and mundane that I have is actually an example of missing the mark. This was an opportunity to be faithful that was missed and still has some repercussions today. While I was the manager at the Chick-fil-A in Wheaton, I took my responsibility very seriously, as did most of the other managers. But one morning, there was a day where someone was supposed to open the restaurant, and I just worked a very long shift the day before, and I got a phone call about 5:35 in the morning, and it was from one of the kitchen workers, and the gentleman who was supposed to be there to open the restaurant wasn't there. So I quickly jumped out of bed, threw on my clothes, raced over to the Chick-fil-A restaurant, got everything open, got it set up, started squeezing lemons, got everything ready just in time for the first customers, for the first guest of the day. And as soon as I was able, got on the phone, called him, like, hey man, like what happened? You're supposed to be here. And he apologetically, in a sleepy voice, like, oh, I'm sorry. I'd had a busy day yesterday. It was long and hard work, and then I had a Bible study last night and just had a great conversation with some friends, and we were talking, and I'm so sorry. I thought there was going to be another leader in addition to me, and that I could just get in a little bit later on and come in and work, and it wouldn't be a big deal. And while he was apologetic for that, and didn't mean to have a poor impact on the team and on the guests that were coming into the store that day, it ended up having a negative impact on his opportunities. He, like me, wanted to pursue the same thing, to own a Chick-fil-A restaurant. He graduated from a prestigious school and was going the same route. And while we forgave him, that being faithful in just the mundane things day to day, such as showing up, being there on time, it wasn't the only occurrence that happened. and people lost trust in him. And it makes me think about to this day. One thing I will give for him, he's a great guy. He's been very tenacious in pursuing this goal. He's still working with Chick-fil-A almost 7 years later in pursuit of that goal. But I always think about what would the outcome have been different if he had been able to learn those characteristics up front in the beginning of following through, being faithful, being a success, and taking each and every day to do it and taking it seriously to the best of God's glory. He may have learned that lesson now, but how many years is that costing him to learn that hard lesson? This reminds me of an apt quote from Thomas Edison. He once quipped, "Opportunity is often missed by people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work. Take every opportunity to work to accomplish things that are hard and often unpleasant." This reminds me of a story from one of Chewett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, in one of his books. Chewett, talking to a young man that worked for one of his operators in a Chick-fil-A restaurant, he gave him a task. He challenged the young man to find the tasks and the jobs that nobody else wanted to do. He challenged them to see if he could have the responsibilities of keeping the restroom clean. With a big smile, the young man looked up and said, "I think I can get that responsibility." Chewett challenged him, "Clean the walls, clean the floors, shine the mirrors, clean the toilets like you're going to drink out of them. Then, after you clean the bathroom like it's never been cleaned before, step back and enjoy the satisfaction that you have done your best, better than anyone else has ever done it. In doing this, we honor God, and God is pleased when we perform at our best in everything that we do. Only then can we realize our greatest potential." So today, how can you be successful right now? Look for opportunities to excel in everything that you do, whether it's the job that nobody else wants to do, like being in the hot, sweaty Chick-fil-A cow costume, or cleaning the bathrooms, or simply arriving on time when you're supposed to be there. Be an expert on the job at hand. Today and always, look for the mundane and do it all to the honor and glory of God. As Scripture states in Luke 16, verse 10, "He who is faithful in very little thing is faithful also in much. He who is unrighteous in a very little thing is unrighteous also in much." The next thing that I want to consider is the closely aligned trait of diligence. Wherever you are right now, make sure that you are developing the character trait of diligence. There is no substitute for hard work. During my 3 years of work for my operator at Chick-fil-A, I averaged 60 hours a week. I was there meeting the needs at hand and not constantly asking for days off because I wanted to go do things with friends or hang out or do other things like that. Currently, one of the questions I ask every potential team member in an interview is I want to find out if they're going to be diligent. So I ask them, how would you rate your work ethic on a scale of 1 to 10? And when I ask them that question, they kind of are a little confused, and no one ever says anything less than 7, right? They're not going to go in for a job and he's like, "Oh, I'm a 2. I'm not a hard worker at all." But the number that they say isn't as important as the follow-up question that I ask them. I want them to be able to tell us stories of how they've been diligent, how they've been a hard worker, how they have followed through. So I ask them, first, what do you think it means to have a good work ethic and to be diligent? And secondly, after they've answered that, if they can, ask them, tell me specific examples of how you have shown diligence in your life. Because it just doesn't work like this, guys. So you don't wake up in the morning and let's say you haven't been diligent. Let's say maybe you were a 2 or 3 on the scale. You don't pull out of bed and stretch, pull out of bed, you get out, the alarm clock goes off, and look at, well, I've been lazy my whole life, but, oh man, you look at your calendar, I've got an interview today. I'm a 10. I'm a hard worker today. Everyone's a hard worker on the day of their interview. What have you been doing the days leading up to that? So my challenge to you is start where you are. Be a success today. Be diligent with what God has given for you to do right now. So if you're not currently employed, maybe you don't have a job, How are you being diligent in your studies? How are you being diligent in the other responsibilities that God has placed in your life? Do you pitch in to help? Do you clean your room? Do you help your family? Do you look for opportunities to do things above and beyond? Do you read God's word diligently each and every day? David is the perfect example of someone who chose to be diligent early in his life. Now, we all know the story of David, and while tending his sheep, David did not sit idly by. He practiced over and over with his sling and his harp. He didn't know how God would use those skills later on in his life, but even while tending the sheep, that skill with his sling, the Bible says he was able to kill the lion and the bear. And later on, we all know he used this sling to kill this Philistine giant called Goliath. Also, David practiced his harp. He would use that harp later on to soothe King Saul when he had his fits of anger in the palace. So David was being diligent with what was before him today, was used mightily by God later in life, and prepared him one day even to take the role of king himself. So you may not know what God will have for you to do in the future, but be diligent now in everything that you do. God is preparing you to fulfill his purpose and perfect plan. So be diligent today to seize opportunities which will prepare you for things which may still yet be unknown to you. And lastly, I want to discuss making your employer look great. One familiar key example of this is in the Bible, in the life of Joseph. Now, you guys all know the story of Joseph, right? He was the one that had that coat of many colors, that his brothers were jealous of him and grabbed him and threw him in the pit and sold him off into slavery. So I'm going to read from Genesis 39, verses 1 through 6, where it talks about, right as Joseph is getting into Egypt. It reads, "Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the bodyguard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, so he became a successful man. And he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. Now his master saw that the Lord was with him, and how the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal servant, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he owned he put in his charge. It came about that from the time he made him overseer in his house and over all that he owned, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house on account of Joseph. Thus the Lord's blessing was upon all that he owned, in the house and in the field. So he left everything he owned in Joseph's charge, and with him there he did not concern himself with anything except the food which he ate." Now there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from that. But as we talk this week with the topic of success, and how can we be a success right here in the now, and not have it be like some far out distant thing in the future, I thought of this story in Joseph and how he focused on making his master successful. And with that, the Lord blessed him, and it says Joseph became a successful man. And I'll think about that. Joseph didn't worry about, he could have easily had a pity party, in fact, right? He just gotten thrown in a pit, sold into slavery. He wasn't even getting paid for the work they had to do. Slaves typically don't even get paid. They're just doing it because they have to. He could have gone in, done the bare minimum possible to just get by. But that's not how Joseph approached things. He rolled up his sleeves. It doesn't give specifics, but I imagine he rolled up his sleeves and he got to work. He was diligent. And as he was diligent and sought the best interests of his master, the Lord blessed him. And what else happened? What else happened to Joseph? What did Potiphar give Joseph as he continued to do more and more for him? Absolutely. He gave him more responsibilities, right? And as he gave him more responsibilities, Potiphar's house was even more successful. And he prospered even more. And relating this to a job, what do you think if Potiphar was an employer, what do you think Potiphar would do? What do you think he would do to Joseph? Do you think he would, who said that? Promote him. Yeah. Don't you think it says at the very end that Potiphar, Potiphar had to didn't concern himself with anything except the food which he ate. Now, if you're an employer, don't you think you would like that if you had a guy like Joseph that came in and took such initiative and had such your best interest at heart that he wanted to make your land and your fields prosper so that you didn't have to do anything except worry about the food that you ate? Think about that now, where you are today. Look for ways to serve other people. So if you have a job, take initiative. Look for ways that you can help out. And as you do that, you'll be successful, and the Lord will bless you. Don't think about, I'm not getting paid to do that responsibility. No, see an opportunity and take advantage of that, whether it's to help the business grow, to make the customer experience better. Maybe it's a more efficient way of doing things. Look for those opportunities. And maybe you don't have a job. Maybe you're in school, but you can still apply the same principle. How can you help other people? Maybe it's a fellow student. Maybe it's someone that you meet here that you can call up on the phone and you can serve them, help them be successful. Maybe it's someone in your family. Maybe it's someone in your church. But it's all about solving problems and making other people as successful as possible. So don't focus on yourself. Look for other people to serve. I still remember the first interview that I had with my future boss at the Chick-fil-A in Wheaton. I remember telling him that I would do anything and everything, and I was committed to working for him to help make himself and the store successful. But I didn't just say it, I truly meant it. I didn't know it at that time, but that promise resulted in many long weeks, some of them with over 80 hours of work. I made a lot of sacrifices. Frequently, there were things that I would have rather been doing in that moment rather than working. But I committed to being faithful in whatever was needed to make that store live up to the reputation of excellence associated with the Chick-fil-A brand, and to make my boss a success. Looked for things that my boss didn't want to do. I looked for ways to make myself valuable to the restaurant, its owner, the team members, and the guests. So be willing to put in the extra time and the effort. The effort is key. Make sacrifices to make others look great. And like Joseph, God will bring about his purposes in your life as you work to prosper others. These are some of the stories and examples from my life. Your story is being written right now. Take advantage of opportunities that God brings your way each and every day. Purpose to set goals and to take action in the now. By being faithful in the mundane, practicing diligence, and making your boss look great. And as you pursue these, God will faithfully write the chapters of your life. The climax and the final chapter of your life are yet to be written. It's what you write today as you faithfully practice these principles that will determine your story. Remember, today's yesterday's future. Don't wait. Live right now. So, thank you. Thank you. So, we've got a few minutes. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask? Yes, right there. Am I allowed to amend menu items? Yes and no. So every restaurant's a little bit different. If someone has a request that they would like us to make, at my restaurant, we'll do everything possible that we can to try to do that. Has anyone heard of Chick-fil-A sauce? Okay. So Chick-fil-A sauce, do you know how that was actually started? That was actually a franchise restaurant owner in Fredericksburg, Virginia, at a mall in Spotsylvania Town Center, and took ingredients from the restaurant, mixed them up, and invented this thing called Chick-fil-A sauce. And he had a big pump outside in his restaurant, and people would pump it into a cup, and he would serve it. And it ended up being such a huge smashing success. The Chick-fil-A chain actually adopted it and created the Chick-fil-A sauce out of it. Yeah.
If you guys
well,
could,
I can't change the menu, but I got this for you. This is pretty good here. Here's a coupon for a free Chick-fil-A sandwich meal. How's that sound?
thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. Yes, sir. My favorite part about owning a Chick-fil-A store. I really like the people side of it. There were three things when I was looking into Chick-fil-A and why I wanted to start that really impressed me. One was the influence you're able to have on other people. I call them the 3 I's. The influence is able to have on other people, and then the independence with owning your own restaurant. You can set your own schedule. You can be your own boss. And the other one was the income opportunity, able to provide for yourself. Yes. The biggest setback. I think one of the hardest things in going through the process is it's very daunting. Like they get between 30 and 40,000 applicants a year applying for a Chick-fil-A restaurant, and it can be really discouraging. So after I worked at the restaurant for owner-operator, I worked for Chick-fil-A Inc., traveling around the country to different restaurants that kind of a temporary role that didn't have a permanent owner, usually relocated to another spot. And a lot of times you feel like you're out there kind of on your own. And I think through that, there was one restaurant in particular. So you come in, you take over the restaurant, and the previous owner relocates to a different store. You frequently lose a lot of people, a lot of team members. And there was one store in particular where they just didn't want anything to do with anything, doing it the right way. They wanted to do it kind of their own way. And it was very challenging trying to learn the lesson that you can make someone do something because you have positional authority over them, and I can make them do it, but trying to win their heart and have them do it because it's the right thing to do. And they told me day one that so my role as an interim manager, they had a previous interim manager several years before and didn't like him. So they told me day one when I walked in, like, I don't like you here. I don't want you here, and we're going to do everything we can to try to get you out of here as quickly as possible. And so like they were doing it was myself, and then there was one other interim manager, and they were like calling Chick-fil-A and saying how terrible these people were, and could have potentially been very damaging. I think the good thing, myself and the other guy I was working with had a really good reputation, so that they looked at the situation and didn't really take the people seriously for what it was. So I think that's something that is very important, is having a good name. That was Truett Cathy started Chick-fil-A. That was his life verse was Proverbs 22:1. A good name is rather be chosen than great riches. Yes. Uh-huh. By poor managers? I would tell you, so if you don't like the leadership that's in charge, what's keeping from you getting into leadership? So if you don't like the management that's in the restaurant, you can complain and not like them, do something about it. Take ownership, step up, take responsibility, and why don't you be one of the leaders so that you can have a positive influence on other people that are in the role that you're in.
So I have a question back here,
Oh, gotcha. Yes.
since I do have a mic. So a lot of people here are very young, and obviously you're young as well. And so for me, I have my own business, and you have a franchise business.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to do it all over again, would you go the franchise route, or would you, find what you want to do and make and be an entrepreneur that way?
Mm-hmm.
And if you choose like the franchise route, how feasible is it? Like what how feasible is it for these young people to be able to follow in your footsteps?
Yeah, great question. So every industry is going to be a little bit different, but specifically with Chick-fil-A, about 60% of the franchise owners with Chick-fil-A started as team members in the restaurant. Part of the culture of Chick-fil-A is really devoted to growing and developing future leaders, and they have great paths and tracks towards those that want to own their own franchise. It costs $10,000 for a Chick-fil-A franchise, and because of that, it gives a lot of opportunities to young people. So when they build a new Chick-fil-A restaurant, it probably costs about $3 million for them to build the building and to purchase the land. And as a young person like myself, to be able to buy like over $1 million and to buy a franchise, I didn't have that kind of money to do that out of college. So that's one thing that really attracted me specifically to the Chick-fil-A model and how they do business. So doing that versus just starting something out completely on your own, I think it just has to do with the opportunity and the idea that you have. So if you have an idea to do something and start an entrepreneurial thing, go out and try it. But then make the distinction between it. Is this something that I'm doing as a hobby, or is this something that is viable, that I can grow and build to be successful, that I can actually make a living off of it to provide for myself? And I think that's a big thing that you need to research and discover, is the distinction between those two things. One more question. I think okay, right there.
So I graduated last year from Thomas Edison State University with my degree in accounting, and when you said you had graduated with your degree in accounting, but you wanted to go into entrepreneurship, you immediately struck a chord with me. So my question was, what from your accounting studies transitioned into your being a franchisor?
Sure. There isn't necessarily one degree that you have to have. I really don't believe that, especially in Chick-fil-A. There's people all sorts of different walks of life and backgrounds, different degrees. It's, I think for me specifically, there's not necessarily something specific with the accounting that I really needed to pursue the field that I was. I think my parents always taught me getting your college degree is important because it will open up certain doors that wouldn't be available. For example, the position I have at Chick-fil-A Inc., you had to have a bachelor's. It didn't have to be in a specific degree like business major, something like that, but a college degree. For accounting specifically, I'm very good with numbers and like kind of the business savvy behind it. I don't know that was necessarily developed through that school and that accounting degree. I think it's I'm more apt towards that, and then also things that as I've been in business, even before Chick-fil-A and then during Chick-fil-A, that I've developed. All right, well, I don't want to hold you guys back. I think we're out of time, and I know dinner is coming up next on the agenda, and I would hate to be the person in between y'all and dinner. So. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you. And if anyone has more questions, I'll be here, and you can talk to me and just find me. I'll be around. So thank you.
The problem is now everybody's going to be wanting to eat Chick-fil-A for dinner, so. You know, Kevin said a lot of interesting things, but I really perked up during that question and answers. Did y'all pay attention? Chick-fil-A sauce in Virginia? Take that, Texas. So, I've traveled around the country speaking for LeMerit, and there's a set in my slides that I would often put up, and I would talk about Chick-fil-A. And I'd ask anybody in the audience, I'd say, have you ever had a bad customer service experience at any fast food restaurant? And everybody would put up their hands and groan and laugh. And I said, if any of you ever eaten at a Chick-fil-A restaurant, and most of them in the right parts of the country would raise their hands and say they have. And I said, have you ever had a bad customer service experience at Chick-fil-A? And nobody would raise their hands. And I say, isn't that incredible? An entire industry known for terrible service, and here's the outlier. And then I'd say, look, you know, this may not be a job that you're going to have for the rest of your life, but you can go get an entry-level job with these people, and you can learn a set of skills about how to create great customer service and wow experiences and do all these really cool things that every industry on the planet wants to have. And so it's a great opportunity. So we started talking about that, and we started thinking about ways that Lumerit could take what we've learned and share it with more people. One of the companies we wanted to partner with on our list was Chick-fil-A. And Woody Robertson has done a lot of work in working with the company and working with individual franchises, including Kevin, to find some ways for us to do that. And one of the things we have set up is we're starting to build a program with individual Chick-fil-A franchises where they would provide some tuition assistance to you as Lumerit scholars if you're working for them. And so Kevin's been working with Woody and us on this a little bit. And so one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to give Kevin something that we've been talking to him about and that we have available for any franchise owner who's interested. And that is what we're calling the Lumerit Scholar Chick-fil-A box. And this box has 5 College Shouldn't Be a Death Sentence t-shirts inside of it. But it also has 5 certificates that are worth $1,000 worth of scholarships to Lumerit Scholar courses, specifically the Dave Ramsey course, which we now are one of the few official providers for, which is Principles of Personal Finance. So obviously anybody can benefit from that course, but that's a fully accredited college course that will count towards a degree at any university. And an operator can take these scholarships, and we would hope that they would give them to their people working for them, but they can give them to anybody. There's no strings attached. But the idea is to introduce the operators to Lumerit and how we work. And then if we can find ways to build partnerships that brings people in and gives you opportunities, that's something that we'd be pretty excited to do. So Kevin, here's your $5,000 worth of scholarships. Thank you. And those of you who work for Chick-fil-A, you should have the opportunity to contact me, and I'd be delighted to have a box sent to your operator. And this is not any kind of catch, right? They can give the scholarships to anybody they want, their friends, family, workers, whatever. And then if they're interested in us, we'll talk to them. And if not, that's fine. At least they've been introduced to the concept, and we've been able to share what Lumerit Scholar does. So if you're interested in that, contact me, and we'd be delighted to do that. And if you're interested in working for Chick-fil-A, we're starting to work with operators all across the country, and we'd be happy to connect the dots for you if possible. In fact, I've been sending some emails to some of you about those opportunities, and so we'd be delighted to connect anybody who's interested in working for franchise owners and operators like Kevin. So, okay, well, the next thing we're going to talk about here is the leadership courses. How many people have attended or have had a leadership course, taken a leadership course, is the right way to say that? Wow, that's fantastic. We may not have to talk about this much more, right? So how many people have actually attended Capstone, done the Capstone course? Very good. Well, there's some things I want you to know, and maybe more importantly, I want you to know so you can tell your friends who aren't here about the leadership courses. The first thing I'd like to just add about the leadership courses is that you are doing your degree very differently. Hallelujah, right? That's the whole reason that you're here. But because of that, there's some ways that you have advantages. There's some things that you've learned that you often don't even quite realize that you've learned, and you don't always know how to put into action. And so what I tell students is the 3 leadership courses are worth your investment because they are the courses that will help you connect the dots and actually use the degree and the fact that you did debt-free in a way that will give you the most advantage. So I cannot more strongly emphasize that I think you should consider the leadership course as a required sort of finishing touch to your experience that will help you make sense of the rest of the process. And so I want to encourage you to do that, but I also want to let you know some things that come with the leadership courses. The first thing that will come with them is the fact that when you purchase leadership course content, you get it for life. You have access to all of those Dr. Meyer's lectures and all that material forever. You can always access that. So you're buying it for your course and for the credit, but then you can always go back to it and use it later. Secondly, we have a leadership certification and then a special certification for Capstone folks. And we've had that for a while, but we're revamping it and redoing it. We'll get you some information about that shortly. But what this means is you'll be able to put a badge and a link on, for instance, your LinkedIn profile and say you're leadership certified. And anybody who's going through that profile can click on that and go to a page where we explain why you are equipped to do the things that you can do and that you are trained and prepared to be a leader and be a person of influence. And so that is something that comes with it. And then the last thing is that we've talked to you an awful lot about networking, connecting with people. These leadership courses also drop you into a Facebook group and an alumni connection that I almost consider a leadership cadre for life. And this includes not only the people that you're going to take the leadership course with, but all the people that will take the leadership course and all the people that have taken leadership courses. And these are the people that are very influential, and we've been doing it long enough that this is a great place for you to connect with people who are looking to hire folks like you. And 5 years from now or less, when you own a Chick-fil-A franchise, or when you've started your business, or when you've advanced in your business, this is one of the best places you can find to go look for other people that can help your organization move forward in some pretty influential ways. And you'll be able to return to this, and this is going to be an organization that you can be part of. So if you've not signed up for a leadership course yet, you should do that. If you haven't signed up for Capstone, you should be aware that Capstone's changing its schedule. So we will hold the Capstone Experience course in 2018 in Colorado live with Dr. Myers, but we will not in 2019, and then we'll hold it again in 2020. So it'll be every other year. So for most of you here, if you want to do Capstone before you graduate, you need to think about getting it on your course timing now. And the way to do that would be to use the chat on dashboard to ask about getting these courses on your degree plan. So if you're considering Capstone, you should right away think about getting set up to do this. And if you haven't considered the leadership courses, then I would just challenge you to really take that seriously as the courses that can give you some significant advantages now and for a long time going forward. So how many of you have been having fun at Apex? And how many of you would like to do it before this time next year, do it again before this time next year? Maybe in your neck of the woods. Well, we can't quite do the same thing at the same scale, but there is a way to do sort of a mini Apex in your region, and Hannah is about to tell you how.
Hi, everyone. All right. So, just like Jonathan said, I'm here to talk about getting together with students again in your state. And I was totally going to start with cool questions like Jonathan just did. So, now that we've already done those, I'll just skip past those. So, I have some really, really exciting news for you. So, you've probably heard this nebulous term floating around the community recently called engage events. And some of you are probably like, what are those? So some of you probably heard about engage groups from previous years, and they were basically local charters, and they would get together once a month. But those didn't really work out as well as planned. So what happened was, over this past year, I've decided to revamp all of them. So this is the new form of engage groups. So is everybody with me? Awesome. So, speaking of this term engage events, there was one that popped up in Michigan this year. Whoop, whoop. There was another one that popped up in New England this year. I heard that one was pretty awesome. So they all seem to be a little bit different, but they all have a very recurring theme that goes through them. So let's use this time and say, what are they? It's time to know. So here's what they are. Engage events are your ticket to seeing other students locally. So it's like a bunch of mini Apexes all over the country, which is pretty awesome, am I right? Yeah. So here is how it works. You have a group of students. They're in the same state or the same local area, depending on how big your state is. Maybe it's you. And they say, wow, we should really get together with some other students without waiting until Apex next year. So then those students come and talk to me, and they're like, we should really do this. And I was like, yeah, that would be really awesome. Let's make it happen. So then that group of students becomes the Engage planning team. And so they get to customize the entire event from top to bottom. Everything from dates, location, time frame, length of event, weekend or not, food, activities, you name it, they get to choose it. And then what Student Life does is we come in, we give them some exciting, thought-provoking, and relevant content from Jonathan himself to learn and discuss while you're together so you can walk away with something awesome. So it's not just getting together with friends, but it's getting together with friends, meeting new students, and getting to learn from some really amazing content that is exclusive to our Engage events that happen throughout the year. So with all of those things, bam, you have a new Engage event. So with that, that means that you've just become friends with Unbound people who are close to you, and you've just learned some really awesome skills and tools to put into practice in your everyday life. And if you helped plan it, then you've just gained valuable experience in leadership, working with a team, logistics, marketing, and event planning. And by the way, those are super valuable skills that employers are looking for in recent college grads. I looked that up. So, resume material. You know where I'm going with that. So, now what I want all of us to do, since this is an interactive session, everybody go, yay! Yay! Okay. So, what we're about to do, we can only do because we are Unbound students. So we're going to get up and we're going to make a map of North America. So here's how it's going to go. Based on your home state, I want you to get yourself up and find yourself on this map, which you should all recognize. But I'm kind of rough with geography sometimes, so if you need help, I included this for you. So before we get up, let's set the map here, okay? So I am Texas, because that's where I live. So your right is the West Coast, and your left is the East Coast. So, okay, hang on. So if you get confused, that sounds like you are, get up and turn to the back of the room, and then it'll make a lot more sense. So go find your people and introduce yourself to the people in your state. Yeah, apparently. Okay, guys, feel free to be inside the chairs so that it makes a lot of sense, okay? What?
Just give them all the details if they have to know.
No,
more
you're right.
specifics.
You guys are where you're supposed to be. Scoot.
Are we taking over
Scoot.
Oklahoma now?
You're just taking over my spot. So. I do. I'll just be like North Texas, like the Panhandle. Okay, everybody, how's it going? Does everybody have a state? Does everybody not have a state and they're totally lost? Canada people, you know where you belong. Okay, we're looking a little crowded up over there in New England. Okay. All right, let's continue going here. So let's see, what do we have? We have Texas on the stage. What do we have? We have New Mexico. I'm sorry. I'm going to let you guys announce yourselves. Who do we have over here? California. What's back there? And back there? Okay, and we have, what's here? Colorado. And this is Oklahoma. And Arkansas. Missouri. Alaska. Woohoo! Give it up for Alaska. Awesome. So you guys, Montana, South, we have Canada. Woo! All right, and then Montana, did I miss anybody else? Okay, let's keep going this way. Iowa, what's down here? Donnie? Missouri? Oh, we have more, oh, okay, cool. We've relocated Missouri. So what about you guys? Illinois. Anybody back there? Minnesota. And Wisconsin. What's over here? Michigan. Hey, we're all in Michigan, aren't we? Okay, what about you guys? Indiana, back here? Ohio. So you guys are going to have to help me over there because you're all kind of clumped together. So let's start at the very top and then work our way down. Woo! New England. Anybody else? Pennsylvania. We've got New York up there. We've got Virginia. Awesome. What about over here? What'd you say? North Carolina. Wait. Puerto Rico! Woohoo! Yes. All right. And then we missed Shulamis. Where are you, Shulamis? Yay! All right, and we have Georgia, Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi, and Louisiana. That's awesome. This is so exciting. This is so cool. Okay, so now that you're all gathered locally, did you meet the other people from your state? Or at least close to your state? Isn't that like... Yeah, keep meeting people for a second. Oh. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. All right, so we got to keep moving. You all have some more time to meet these people in a minute. We forgot one announcement. We have somebody here from France. Isn't that the coolest thing ever? All right. So let's go back for a second. Remember that group of students that got together and they were like, we should really get some local students together without waiting until Apex. So, well, some of you standing here have already done that because there's upcoming engage events. So you may be standing in a state where an event is about to happen and there may be some in the works. So let's go through these engage events. So here's what we're going to do. If you are within driving distance of an engage event, I want you to cheer when you hear it, okay? All right, so our first, whoa, wait a second. Hold on. All right, so our first engage event is Engage California in Coulterville. Yay! So, it's planned by Casey Hyatt, Michaela Thomas, and Hannah Edstrom. This event is coming up September 1st through 4th, which is a Friday to a Monday of Labor Day weekend, and you can still sign up to go. It will be on a campground at Casey Hyatt's campground, at his parents' campground. And you'll be in a cabin, and you'll get to explore Yosemite National Park while getting this year's content on learning how to create more freedom in your schedule through maximizing your efficiency, which is so cool. So talk to Casey if you have any questions. So our next one is Engage Virginia in Blacksburg. All right. So this one is planned by Rachel Kimsey, Sarah Shaw, and Caitlin Brush. So registration for Engage Virginia just opened this week. So it will be in October 28th through the 22nd, which is a Friday to a Sunday. Now the cool thing about Virginia is that rumor has it that Jonathan Brush will be there live, giving a preview at next year's content. So don't miss your opportunity to see Jonathan in his home state. So our next one is Engage Washington in Spokane. Yeah, I should hear that whole corner over there. Come on, try it again. Whole corner, over you. Engage Washington. Yay! So, Engage Washington is actually planned by me. Plot twist. It's coming up November 4th through 6th, Friday to Sunday. And we will also have Jonathan there with other members of the Student Life team, but you'll never guess which ones, to film the new content for all the Engage events that will happen next year. So we'll be focusing in on ways to set you up for success for post-college life by practically sharing tips and advice for getting a job and growing in a job unconventionally. So it's going to be really awesome, and we want to see you guys there. So our next one is Engage Texas in Dallas. So this one is planned by Hayden Sparks, Sarika Lubin, Sarah Johnston, Sarah Parlin, and Victoria Groves. So registration for this one is not open yet, but it should be coming soon, so keep your eyes peeled. The dates are still unofficial, but mark it on your calendar to come see students in Texas. So if you guys cheered for an event, you should be putting that event on your calendar, and you should be going. So go talk to the people leading your event and get the event details from them. And when you're ready to register, you can go to students.getunbound.org/engage to get access to all the registration forms for each event that's ready to go. So all of these are up there. So we want to see you connecting. So if you did not cheer for an event, I did not forget you. And get with those lovely people that are standing next to you and build a team to get your event off the ground. If you just can't happen to plan an event in your own area, then consider joining one of the other ones that are around the country, because these events don't have to be exclusive. So we would love to see you guys connecting in smaller, different ways and not having to wait until Apex. So to debrief, seeing other students in your area is really, really incredible to build relationships that go beyond our once or twice a year events. And it's an incredible opportunity for you guys to take initiative to try something new and to plan something that's really bigger than yourself. However, seeing that other students isn't the only reason to plan or attend an Engage event, the content that I referred to for these events are developed by the Student Life team to cover relevant, important topics to enable you specifically as Unbound students to maximize your productivity and to hone in on your skills for success in every area of your life. So during 2017, and for some of these events, we focused on creating more freedom in your busy schedule to do the things that you want to do, and how to manage the tricky balance of discipline and flexibility well. So our newest content topic for 2018, which will be previewed in Virginia and then happen at Washington, is to focus on that difficult getting a job process and make it less difficult by explaining the hiring side of things and showing you how to approach it counterculturally, putting you a step ahead of everybody else. So, since this is such a neat opportunity to bring Apex to your state by meeting new students, connecting you with the people that you meet here, and receive amazing content to set you up for success, I hope that you will all take advantage of it, and I really hope to see a bunch of mini Apexes sweeping across the country, because that would be really cool, and you can get exclusive content that way. So, that being said, we're going to transition to dinner. Woot woot. So, before you move, a couple of things. I want you guys over dinner to talk to these people that are standing next to you and see what you guys can come up with. And for cleanup tonight, we have teams 11 and 12. So make sure